Welcome to lesson 2.1. We're going to be talking about integers and absolute value today. Alright, we have a few terms we need to learn before we get started. The first term is a negative number, which is something you've probably heard of already. But what is a negative number? A negative number is a number less than 0. So if you picture a number line, it's all of the numbers before 0. So anything to the left of 0. So -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, so on and so forth. All those numbers are negative numbers because they're less than 0. Another term that you need to know is an integer. What is an integer? An integer is all negative and all positive whole numbers plus 0. So we have -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. All of those are called integers. A coordinate. A coordinate are points on a number line. So if we wanted to signify where -3 is on a number line, we would use a coordinate by putting a point on -3. There's a coordinate at -1, a coordinate at 2, and a coordinate at 3. So anywhere where you put a dot on a number line showing us what number you're talking about. Another term that you need to know is inequality. So basically if you listen to the word inequality, it's not inequality. So either these two numbers are going to be greater than, one of them is going to be greater than, or one of them is going to be less than. That's what we're talking about with equality. So there are several different inequalities that we have. It could either be greater than. If you see the example 2 and 1, 2 is greater than 1, so you would have this symbol. It kind of looks like an alligator's mouth is wanting to eat the bigger number. The inequality less than looks like this. So it looks like the mouth is closed to this number because this one is bigger than it. And another symbol that we use to signify inequality is the equal sign. Alright, the last term that we need to know is absolute value. Now, absolute value is the distance from 0. So the absolute value of the number -3 is just 3. Because when you start at 0 and you figure out how many units it is away from 0, we have 1, 2, 3. So even though the number is negative, when it goes inside of these absolute value symbols, you take away the sign. So how many units is -3 away from 0? It is 3 units. Alright, let's do a few examples. The first two examples are phrases. So loss of 8 yards and deposit of $15. In both of these examples, we're going to take the phrase and we're going to make it an integer. So for example, if we read loss of 8 yards, when I hear the word loss, I know that I'm talking about something that's small, something that's shrinking. So if we're losing 8 yards, we're going to have to subtract 8 yards, or -8 is our integer. The next one, deposit of $15. Deposit. When your parents deposit money in the bank, they are putting money into the bank, so their bank account is growing. So we are doing a positive operation. So we are going to be adding $15 or have a positive 15. Alright, and number 3, we have 3 different parts. On the first part, we are going to look at the numbers -2 and -6. So these two numbers are integers. We're going to find them on the number line and see which one is greater than and which one is less than. So let's go ahead and look at the number line. -2 is right here on the number line, and -6 is right here on the number line. So as you go from left to right, we are growing. So the number that is on the right should be the biggest. So in this case, -2 is greater than -6. Now when you come into contact with negative numbers, it works a little bit differently than positive numbers do. Like if you were talking about with positive numbers, is 3 or 2, which one is greater, 3 or 2? We would know that if the number is bigger, then that means that the number is greater. But the opposite is true for negative numbers. So if we have -2 and -6, the bigger the number gets, the smaller it actually is because it's moving further units away from 0, which means it's getting smaller. For -5 and 1, now we're going to think about which one's bigger, which one's smaller. Alright, -5 is right here on the number line, and 1 is right here. Sorry, that's negative 1. So if 1 is here and negative 5 is here, if you remember, I just said that the number that's on the right is going to be the greatest one, because as you move from left to right, the numbers are getting bigger. So in this case, number 1 is to the right of negative 5. So 1 is bigger. And any positive number is going to be bigger than a negative number. So you could have negative 1 million, and that's still going to be smaller than 1 because it's to that side of the 0. All right, to the next step in number 3, we're going to put the numbers in order from least to greatest. So we're going to be smallest on this side and biggest on this side. So I see some negative numbers and some positive numbers. So I know for sure that negative numbers are going to have to be first because they're smaller than positive numbers. So let's go ahead and find all the negative numbers and put them in order from least to greatest. Negative 3, negative 6, negative 2, and negative 4. Now if you remember what I just said, the bigger the negative number is, it's actually the smallest it is. So we have negative 3, negative 6, negative 2, negative 4. So that means that negative 6 is the smallest. Then we go negative 4. Then we have negative 3. Then negative 2. Now we can add our positive numbers in because we know that they're bigger than the negative numbers. So then we're going to go from smallest to biggest with our positive numbers. So we have 1, 2, and 3. And they're actually already in order. So we're going to put 1, 2, 3. So that's the order of numbers from least to greatest. All right, those are some practice with integers. Now we're going to go ahead and switch gears a little bit and work with absolute value. So if you remember what I said, absolute value is the distance from 0. So the absolute value of 5 is 5. The absolute value of negative 5 is 5 because both of those are 5 units away from 0, the middle point. So the absolute value of 6 is 6. You basically drop the negative sign and you just put 6 because it's 6 units away from 0. Doesn't matter if it's 6 units to the left or 6 units to the right, it's still 6 units. Okay, the absolute value of 5 is 5 because it is 5 units away from 0. Now let's go ahead and apply the absolute value into some sort of expression, some operation that we're going to have to solve. So negative 4 minus 3. So the absolute value of negative 4 is 4 because it's 4 units away from 0. Then we're going to take 3 away from 4 and our answer is going to be 1. So that would be one example of how you would include absolute value in an operation. Let's try one more. This one has a variable, so it's a little bit different. Okay, so it says the absolute value of y plus 8. So the first step I need to do is figure out what y is because we can't do anything until we know what y is. So I'm going to go ahead and I look over here and I have extra information. So y is equal to negative 7. So I'm going to first put negative 7 in for y. Equals. So now we can solve it now that we don't have variables anymore. So let's first find, just like in the order of operations when you do parentheses first, you do absolute value first whenever you run into it. So let's go ahead and do absolute value before we add. So the absolute value of negative 7 is 7 because you magically kind of take away the negative number because we're only talking about units away from 0. Doesn't matter if it's to the left of the 0 or to the right of the 0. So it's 7 units away from 0, then plus 8, which gives us 15. Alright, now we're going to do some practice problems on your own, and then you're going to see what you get. You can rewind the video if you need to. You can make sure that all your notes are done, all for tomorrow. Okay? Good luck. Molly? Alright, you have 4 problems to do. Let's go ahead and look over them real quick. Number 1, it says 8 degrees below 0. So just like I did in the first few examples, you need to go ahead and write that as an integer. Is it a positive integer? Is it a negative integer? And what number is it? Number 2, it says negative 7 degrees blank 3 degrees. You need to tell me if negative 7 is greater than 3, if it's less than 3, or if it's equal than 3, or equal to 3. Number 3, put in order from least to greatest. So in those braces down there, you see
28, negative 6, 0, negative 2, 5, negative 52. You need to put those numbers in order from least to greatest. And last one, number 4, you have the absolute value of 10 minus the absolute value of negative 4 equals. So go ahead and use the rules for absolute value to solve that problem. Good luck. We'll see what you get in class tomorrow.